Hey, you're listening to the Burnt Out Entrepreneur podcast, where you'll learn why you're feeling so burnt out, some insights and hacks to get you along this entrepreneurial journey. I'm Kylie Ota, former oil and gas manager turned health coach, life coach, and business mentor for female entrepreneurs just like you, and help them heal and recover from burnout. Welcome back to another episode of the Burnt Out Entrepreneur, where we empower entrepreneurs just like you on their journey to break free from the chains of their businesses and create a life of freedom and balance. I'm your host, Kylie Ota, life coach and business strategist, and I'm thrilled to be your guide on burnout freedom journey. So today, in honor of the 4th of July, we have a special episode for you. We're going to be talking on how we can celebrate freedom in entrepreneurship and in our lives. So as we commemorate the spirit of independence today, we're going to be exploring the significance of freedom, specifically on time freedom, because I sent out a survey and that's what you guys wanted me to talk about, was specifically time freedom. So there you go. If you're not commenting in my DMs, or if you're not following me on Instagram, I am very active on my stories and my DMs. So look out for those opportunities. If you want me to talk on something specific, go ahead and leave me a comment there, kylie.ota on Instagram. Okay, so back to today's episode. We're going to be talking all about time freedom, because sometimes in entrepreneurship, we think it's all about money freedom and income. And yes, the income does allow us to have more choices in our lives, but right, why did we start a business? We could have had income freedom by staying in our corporate job, working the grind, right? But what did we choose to do? We chose to build a business. We chose to go into entrepreneurship specifically for time freedom, especially if you've been burnt out in your career, right? That's why we started a business, so that we could have control of our time. But what often happens is we come into entrepreneurship, and I'm guilty of this, right? I was going from working 12-hour shifts at the refinery and ended up working 14, 16-hour days. Like, I was up at 5, I was plugging out at 10, sometimes past 10. If I was building funnels for my clients, when I was doing project management work, oh my goodness, like, I wouldn't have come to bed. And if you missed that, I talked about that on my last email. You can go ahead and sign up for that. Go to burnoutentrepreneurquiz.com, get your, burntoutarchetypequiz.com, and get your archetype, first of all, and then you'll be added to the email list, and you'll get all of the juicy details that I send out to my email list. So I sent out an email just mapping out my journey of entrepreneurship and how, I went from the pot into the frying pan, and what I thought was going to help me with burnout ended up being more of the burnout journey. You know what I mean? So today, what we're going to be talking about is the first step to time freedom. And this is a concept that I learned, from one of my mentors of productivity, and he calls it looking at your mortgage time. So what specifically is mortgage time? It's what you're already committed to, right? Last episode, we talked about how to conduct a time audit and how to, really create boundaries, especially for us as females, right? We know that, well, if you're an outgoing entrepreneur like me, or outgoing female like me, I love saying yes to everything because I love exploring. I love meeting new people. So I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And the next thing you know, when you look at your calendar, right? I specifically use Google Calendar, but you put everything down in your calendar and you're like, whoa, I'm way overcommitted, right? So there's stuff that you've committed to, right? We have kids' sports. I mean, right now my kids are adults, so I don't have to worry about that. But what are your kids doing? What, like, that's a whole calendar in itself, right, ladies? So what are your kids doing? What church commitments have you committed to? Like church activities, right? Like Bible studies, potlucks. There's so many things that are adjacent to that one activity on your calendar, right? You can't just look at what you're doing right now, or like say, I'm going to a Bible study today, right? But the Bible study also means I have to bring a potluck dish. So, right, I have to plan for the potluck dish and do I need to cook, right? So that one activity really expands. And so when we're talking about mortgage time, it's similar. I always talk about time versus money. It's the same thing as building a budget around money, right? So mortgage, like what are you already committed to paying? What bills are you already committed to paying, right? You have your mortgage or your rent, you have like these are your fixed expenses, right? You have your mortgage, your rent, you have your groceries, you have like your phone bill, your light bill, water bill. These are fixed expenses that we always have to be paying every month. And so, right, you have your income, you have your expenses, and what's left over is what we call, right, the disposable income, what you can do with that money. It's the same thing with time, right? You look at your mortgage times, what are your fixed expenses related to time? And you have to list all those out. And the perfect way for me is on a Google Calendar, because if there's something that happens every week, then I don't have to spend the time and the energy to document that. I just create a recurring event on my calendar and I'll go in there and I can see it pop up every week. And I also have like a color coding system on my calendar. So for meetings, anything that I have to show up for, they're all marked in red, so they pop out at me. And then there's other things like self-care is a different color, but I have recurring appointments with myself when it comes to self-care, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's doing hair, nails, whatever, massages. I have those as recurring appointments on my calendar. They may not be scheduled per se, but I know that I have a slot for it because it's just like your money, right? If you don't write it down, it's just going to go out the door and you don't know what you did with that time. And I want to know in advance, okay, what will I be spending my money on? So that way I can, make sure I have enough money in the bank. If you're talking about time, right? If you have enough time on your calendar to actually fit those things into your schedule. So that's why I write everything out. I create recurring appointments with myself for self-care. And this will tell you exactly how much white space you have on your calendar. And when you're looking at, your mortgage time, what's already been spent, right? Because you have your fixed expenses, the things that you're already committed to, that's your mortgage time. And then you have the disposable, you know, time spent, which is that self-care stuff, because those things can move around, they can shift. But those hard-coded things, like you have to have them in your calendar so that you know exactly how much time you have left over to do things in your business, right? A lot of times we focus on the front end of marketing. We're like, okay, I need to post on social media. I need to go live. I need to create a workshop. I need to, send out an email. All the things we do for the front end of our businesses. But then there's also that back end stuff that we kind of forget about, like website maintenance or or like talking to your VA, setting things up for the future, like mapping things out for Q3. We're already heading into Q3, right? Those things still need to get done, although they're not pressing right now. Those are still things that we have to set aside. Just like your say your car insurance, you pay it every 6 months. It's the same thing where you kind of, you know, put some of this money into that fund so that you have money to pay it out when it's time to pay out. It's the same concept. So mortgage time, right? We have to make sure we have enough white space on our calendar to really have that time freedom. And I do this exercise with all of my clients, and when it comes down to it, we look at what's already been written down and then we check it against their own, priorities and values. So a lot of times what happens with women who feel burnt out, who feel stretched thin, they'll look at their mortgage time and they'll say, oh, now I know why I feel so burnt out. It's because everything on my calendar doesn't pertain to me. It pertains to my church, it pertains to my kids, pertains to my spouse, pertains to work, business, whatever, it doesn't pertain to her and her values. So the next step would be to align everything that you're doing and making sure that it lines up with your priorities and your values. And it doesn't have to be like your overarching values. It could be your values for the season, right? Right now we are in summer. So, kids are out of school and, different things it's a different energy, a different vibe happening during the summer. So what you can do is, okay, what are my priorities and values for this season or even for third quarter? Like, what are my top 3 goals that I want to accomplish in the third quarter, right? So that's what you're going to prioritize. And I have a productivity coach, and he says we should not have more than 5 projects at a time. And projects also include personal projects. So if you guys are taking a camping trip in the month of June, that is going to be 1 project or maybe 2. If you're doing an RV, like getting the RV ready, right? There are bigger projects, and then we chunk them down into smaller and smaller tasks that we distribute on a daily basis, weekly basis, over the month, et cetera, right? There's different ways that you can map out your goals, different strategies that you can use to kind of trickle down those tasks to make sure you have everything done before it's time to go on that camping trip, right? So what we want to do is make sure that our mortgage time or anything that we have written down lines up with our priorities and values. And when it's not, like I said, that's when women especially feel the most burnt out. So, right, we talked about mortgage time. We talked about making sure that what we're doing actually lines up with our priorities and values. And again, if it doesn't, we talked about it in the last episode, set boundaries. Go listen to the episode with Heather Roberts. We talked about how she helps women set boundaries. So I've talked about the AED method. If you're not familiar with AED, I used to be a combat medic in the Army. So the AED is a defibrillation machine, right? It's what, if we're feeling dead, right, we can use that to recharge ourselves, our lives, our businesses. AED. And that's why I use that acronym, because me, I love acronyms. I love giving you guys a visual. So automate. And it's not necessarily in this order, but AED is the acronym, right, for the defibrillator. So it's AED, automate, eliminate, delegate. Most times I would like to see you guys eliminate things first before you automate. But if there's things that you're doing consistently in your business, I will sometimes start with the automate, because, right, if you're posting on social media, like, how can you automate that? Can you, like, do you have to, like, write it out every day? Can you batch create your content and then put it in scheduler, right? You don't have to buy a scheduler. Facebook, Instagram, you can use the Meta Business Suite to schedule out your posts. There's so many free tools and opportunities out there. We really don't have to use any paid tools if you're just getting started. But if you want a more robust, right, you can upgrade and get fancier tools. Just like when you start cooking, right? You just need a pot and pan. But when you start getting fancier, that's when you start incorporating different, you get, a Vitamix, or you get a standing mixer, right? KitchenAid. You upgrade your tools as you become more proficient in that skill. Same thing with entrepreneurship. You can start small, you can start free, and then you build up from there. So, right, we talked about automate, eliminate. Go through all your things. It can be business, it can be personal, but go through all the things, right? What do you need to do today in your business? Or what do you need to do this month, this week? Just look at everything that you have done. A lot of times when we're feeling that stress or feeling that overwhelm, it's because we just have too much on our plates. And yes, this goes back to priorities and values. We can write everything down, right? Just sometimes I'll have my clients just brain dump everything that they have going on. Because when we have too much going on up here, I talk about the RAM, right? It's just like having too many tabs open on your computer. Your computer will slow down. So every task that's not written down, that's unaccounted for, is an open loop happening in your brain. So what you need to do is go into your brain, dump it out on a sheet of paper so that it's not an open tab. So, well, for open tabs on your computer, right? You can copy all of those URLs, put them, make them in a Asana task, or put them on a Google Doc even. Just copy and paste them to a Google Doc, close the tabs. So you're not losing any tabs, right? You have all the URLs open. I mean, yes, if you have any work completed or that you need to complete the work and then close the tab, whatever. If you copy and paste it onto a Google Doc, whatever. Like, if you need to close a tab, close the tabs, gather the data, close all the tabs. It's the same thing. Same thing for this, right? We want to eliminate the overwhelm. Brain dump all the tasks that you have pending, put them all down, and then you can see, okay, which one aligns with my priorities and my values. And that's when you're going to go and look at your calendar. How much white space? Because we've already listed out the mortgage time. So how much white space do I have on my calendar to fit all of these to-dos onto my calendar? And, my productivity coach, he talks about emergent task, right? We're not going to know everything that's going to happen today. I won't know if my dog will eat something, then we'll have to make an emergency run to the vet. I don't know. But so again, like, leave some white space. I tell my clients, leave some white space, right? It's the 80-20 rule. Because you never know what's going to happen. And when our schedules are like booked to the hilt, that's when we feel stressed, when other things are trying to, the emergent tasks try to get onto our calendar. These are the pop-up things that try to get on our calendar. And when I was younger, my kids were in sports and whatever, a lot of the emergent tasks or the pop-up tasks were, Mom, I need to buy something. I have a project due tomorrow. I need to go to the store. I need to get a poster board, and I got to go get some magazines. I have to, put this project together. And I'm like, whoa, I've already worked 12 hours today. I need to get up at 3 a.m. tomorrow so that I can function for another 12 hours. And, so like all of that would add up and pile on. And then, the banshee in me would just like, just come out, and like, I'd be nasty, I'd be angry. And, the kid, they're just kids. They had no idea. But because I was stressed to the hilt, I was booked solid. And then, trying to put one thing more on top of everything else I was already doing just stressed me out, and I lost my cool, and it was over. And so what I'm trying to help you guys do is, the things that I've learned over the years is really leaving that 20% open for those pop-up tasks, because we all know that it happens. Just life happens. So leave yourself some breathing room, some space so that you're not feeling stressed out, burnt out. It's also why I love planning out launches over a 6-week period. I would have clients come in and say, hey, I want to host a masterclass next week. I'm like, well, I take them through my launch checklist and be like, okay, here we are. We have all of these things to do. And if we're repurposing content, fine. But if we're starting it from scratch, no way. Because who's going to do like copywriting, the landing page building, creating the graphics? There's so many things on the launch checklist. And if you want the launch checklist, let me know, and I can probably create a resource for you guys. But let me know in the comments if that's something that you want. But yeah, we have to know ahead of time what's happening. Otherwise, we're going to get so overwhelmed, so bogged down, and we're going to feel so burnt out. And again, that's another reason why we experience launch burnout. We don't clear our calendars, right? There's 2 ways to approach the launch, healing from launch burnout. One, right? We spread the tasks out over a longer period of time so that we can sparse it out. Okay, I can do 2 tasks today, and then we just spread out the tasks over a longer period of time. Or, right, if we know that we're going to be creating stuff within these 2 weeks, right? We front load all of the other stuff as much as we can, and we create more white space in these 2 weeks that we're going to be in active launch mode. And, I always try to leave white space for my clients because all of these pop-up tasks will happen. I mean, you can plan as much as you want to plan, but again, right? Life happens, stuff happens, ideas happen in the middle of a launch where you want to incorporate something. You have to have enough white space so that you don't feel burnt out. You're not working, you're not burning the midnight oil because you've planned the white space in advance to take care of those things. Okay, let's see. And again, if you're feeling super burnt out right now, maybe it's time to reevaluate your business model. And this is what I talk about in the burnout archetypes. A lot of times we learn things from the gurus, right? How to do a summit. And these are the things that you need to do, right? All of these programs come with a checklist. Well, the good ones do, right? They come with a checklist of all the things that you have to do, like a pre-launch, during launch, post-launch, and they have things that you are supposed to do. Like if you want to host a webinar, these are the things that you have to do to host a webinar. What if hosting a webinar is not your jam? What if you'd rather just do an email only launch because you're more of an introvert, you express yourself better through writing versus being on video? I'm the opposite, by the way. I love talking, which is why I started this podcast. Not necessarily like video, but video is a necessity. And I learned how to get over, stage fright and be able to talk into a camera and not have any feedback. That's the worst part for me, is like talking to a camera, not having any feedback. It's kind of off-putting for me as an extrovert. And I'm a responder. I like to respond to my audience and see what's going on. So I know that this is resonating with you and what have you. So like props to me for overcoming that, because honestly, that was one of my fears. So anyway, you may want to consider reevaluating your business model so that it really aligns with your personality. And that's why I created the Burnout Archetype quiz, burnoutarchetypequiz.com. Go ahead and take that and see how it lines up with your personality. You're going to get a readout on, okay, how your personality likes to build things, how your personality likes to see things, like some of the fears that you may have. And like maybe it's imposter syndrome, but imposter syndrome shows up in 4 different ways according to each archetype. There's such good value. I was a psychology major. I was in mental health when I was in the Army. So, that the mental health and the sociology pieces are like so key for me, and like understanding who I am and really what am I good at? What's my zone of genius? These are things that I worked on myself with, that I work on my clients with, because it's so important as entrepreneurs to have that clarity, because with the clarity then comes the confidence to show up online, be who you are, right? Own your audacity. That's another program that I have to help you build the confidence so that you can show up as the person you are on the inside. Right? Social media is scary. Marketing is scary. But when we tap into our inner confidence, that's what really makes us magnetic, makes us attractive to our audience. So anyway, let me just do a little bit of a recap. We talked about mortgage time. We talked about making sure everything that we're committed to, everything that we've mortgaged ourselves to, lines up with our priorities and values. And when they don't, that's when we feel burnt out. And then if there's already too much on our plates, right, we have to use the 80-20 rule to kind of create more white space on our calendar, especially if you're juggling a lot of things, right? Kids, work, business, all the things, right? We have to make sure everything's balanced, everything's aligned, and enough white space to deal with those pop-up tasks that will just kind of emerge. And some of the way to create that white space on your calendar is to do the AED method, where it's automate, eliminate, delegate. You get rid of some of that stuff that you don't need to be doing, stuff that, just give it to someone else, give it to a bot, right? That's automate, give it to a bot, eliminate, just take it off your plate. Like, are these things what I really need to be doing? Or is it just fluffy because someone told me this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now? And then once you're done with that, then you delegate the rest. Find someone. I know it's hard to find someone. Maybe I have an episode on how to find a good VA, but just delegate the things that you don't want to do. And if it's too scary to delegate in your business, go ahead and delegate in your personal life, right? Hire a housekeeper. Like, you need to get those hours back. I talk about time versus money all the time, right? If you need time freedom, sometimes you have to invest money to buy back some of that time. And then it's a balance, right? So anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Burnout Entrepreneur, where I help burnt out entrepreneurs like you find the balance, find the freedom. And I hope you guys are enjoying your summer and your 4th of July Independence Day today. And I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you guys again.